If this doesn't have its origin in Mecca with a real guy named Muhammad who lived in Mecca, how did we get this tradition and this religion if it's not based in at least some historical core facts? We'll get there, but go ahead. Let's talk about Muhammad.
Welcome to Events and History, where we explore the origins, teachings, and historical development of Islam with a fact-based, analytical What if everything you've been told about Muhammad is not true? What if the city of Mecca hadn't even been established during his lifetime? And what if significant portions of the Quran drew on ancient Jewish folklore and early Christian hymns? In this eye-opening revelation, Dr. J. Smith boldly questions the core of Islamic tradition. He doesn't just challenge beliefs, he shakes the very roots of history. Prepare yourself, because the insights you're about to discover could transform your understanding of the past. The evidence he shares invites you to rethink long-held assumptions and consider a very different origin story for Islam. What follows could challenge the traditional narrative and reshape how you understand the origin of Islam. Stay tuned for a perspective that might redefine everything you thought you knew. Let's watch the video.
Let's get into Muhammad, because I know the question probably in my mind and a lot of other minds listening right now is, if this doesn't have its origin in Mecca with a real guy named Muhammad who lived in Mecca, how did we get this tradition and this religion if it's not based in at least some historical core facts? We'll get there, but go ahead. Let's talk about Muhammad.
Yeah. Now, obviously, my area and my expertise is not to answer that question because it's too soon to answer that question. I can give you some theories as to why I think they finally had to create this religion, and it's like almost every religion that is made. It is always in competition with something other. It becomes a heresy, and that's exactly what John Damascus calls it, a heresy in 730. So, but we'll get to that later on.
Sure.
As for this Muhammad guy, see, what we have done, we have pretty much shown that there's no Mecca. We can do that just by, if you can see all the reference, there's no reference anywhere to this place Mecca. Which then brought the second question that you brought up, and that was the manuscripts itself, the Quran. There, in the same video that last week where Yasser Qadi made this claim that we cannot trust the traditions, he did say in that same video, in the same interview, but we can trust the Quran. Because no scholar is in doubt that the Quran was from Uthman. Now, what he doesn't know is that there are many scholars that are in doubt with that. He's saying no Muslim scholar is in doubt. But Western scholars are very much in doubt, and for one very good reason. When you look at those manuscripts and when you see that there's no reference, there are no examples of it. The Birmingham Folio is the only one they can look at, and the Birmingham Folio are just 2 pages, and they're nothing to do with Islam. They're to do with Christianity and paganism and the Old Testament. They're pre-Islamic. They're all documents that come from the Seven Sleepers of Ephesus. That's from 146 A.D. That comes the story of Moses. That comes from the Old Testament itself. And then, of course, the story of Matthew, which comes from about 500 A.D. So these are pre-Islamic stories that you would expect to be moving around and traveling, in fact, being used in Arabic all over that area. And if you're going to put together a book that is very quick to come from a prophet, because once you've created the prophet, you got to have a book, then you're going to start borrowing from right, left, and center. And these are 3 borrowings that would already be in existence in Arabic. They shouldn't have borrowed them because they don't have any source. And they do have a source. We know the date. We even know the men that wrote it. That's the problem. So even when they did put together the Quran, they put it using Christian sectarian writings. That's why you have lots of references to Gnostic views of who Jesus was. Notice almost all the references to Jesus are during his childhood. In chapter 346, he's speaking from the cradle. No, he did not, but that's the Gnostic view from the lost books of the Bible. He then, about 3 verses later, takes some mud, makes them out of clay, and blows on them, and they fly up into the air, creating birds out of clay. That's not in our New Testament.
Gospel of Thomas, isn't it? Something like that. Is it the Gospel of Thomas or one of those heretical Gospels that were...
One of the Gnostic Gospels, the lost Arab book of the Bible, the Gospel of Thomas, I think refers to it. And then you have him in chapter 19, where he and his mother are hungry. And he's a baby, and he bends down a tree so they can eat from the fruit. That comes to the lost books of the Bible as well. These are all 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century Gnostic writings in existence today. Interestingly, they were all translated into Arabic. Therefore, those who were putting the Quran together only had access to those stories. They didn't have access to the original gospel account. They didn't have access to the New Testament because that was not translated into Arabic until the late 9th century. And the earliest manuscript we have for the New Testament in Arabic is the Codex Sinaiticus 151, which is still in St. Catherine's Monastery. Not to be confused with the Codex Sinaiticus that we have in London for the entire New Testament in Greek. This is the Arabic translation that's still there. And that is where you get, that was so you can see if the New Testament was not translated into Arabic until the 9th century, who put the Quran together in the 8th century didn't have access to it. They had these stories that they had access to. That's why the Quran is full. Look at the enormous amount of stories of the prophets, the Old Testament prophets. They're not the same stories we have in our Bible, but we know exactly where every one of them comes from. The story of Cain and Abel, that's in chapter 5, verse 31 and 32. That comes from the Targum of Jonathan ben Uzziah, written in the 2nd century. The story, I'm going to get this out of my here. The story of Abraham there in Mecca, rebuilding the Kaaba, going into the Kaaba and destroying all the idols, and then coming out and being thrown into a fiery pit. That's not in your New Old Testament. I don't remember Abraham ever being in Mecca, and he certainly didn't go into a Kaaba and destroy idols, and he certainly didn't go into a fiery pit. That's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But that is from the Mishnah of Rabbah, written in the 2nd century, a Jewish apocryphal account. It makes its way into chapter 21 of the Quran. And one of my favorite stories, the story of Solomon. Remember Solomon? You know the story of Solomon, but did you know that he would have a bunch of birds that he would march and get ready for battle, and they would fly up over the enemy and drop stones onto the enemy with the name of the enemy at the bottom of the stone? Did you know that?
I did not know that story, Jay.
In chapter 27, verse 17 to 44 of the Quran, you have Solomon training his birds to get ready for battle, but one bird is missing, and he gets angry that his favorite bird, the hoopoe bird's not there. And so when he's yelling and screaming about the hoopoe bird, suddenly it flies in from the south, lands at his feet, and talks to him. Lo and behold, Solomon talks to birds in this account. And this bird said it's been way down in the south in the land of Sheba, and it's seen a beautiful queen down there, and he wants Solomon to come down and meet him. Well, Solomon says, no, I'm busy marching my birds. You go back and bring her up. So he does, goes back, lands at the feet of the queen of Sheba and talks to her. Looks like everybody talked to birds back in the time of Solomon. So about 1000 BC. So she comes up with her retinue, comes up to Jerusalem, is coming into the throne room, about to walk across the throne room to meet Solomon sitting on the throne, when she looks down and sees a pond. She has to cross the pond, so she picks up her skirts to keep them from getting wet. That's where the story ends in verse 44. Now, have you heard that story before? Is that in our Bible?
No,
you want to know where that comes from?
Where?
That comes from the 2nd Targum of Esther. I kid you not. It's a folk tale that the Jews would take from surrounding cultures, and they would put Solomon's name to it, and they would read it for children. It's a bedtime folk tale written in the 2nd century, basically for entertainment for the children.
And so this is in the Quran.
Yeah. Now, the only difference, word for word, it's almost exactly the same. The 2nd Targum of Esther, with chapter 27, verse 17 to 44 in the Quran, almost word for word, except when she picks up her skirt in the 2nd Targum of Esther, her legs are shown, and she has hairy legs. That is taken out. They don't put that in the Quran for obvious reasons. But can you see what's happening here? These are great stories. They're meant for entertainment. They were never considered to be authoritative. And yet those stories make it into the Quran, not the authoritative ones.
Now, Jay, you also, in your presentations, one of the presentations at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, again, they're in the show notes of this program, ladies and gentlemen. You have to watch those presentations to see the fullness of what Jay is saying here, Dr. Jay Smith. You also point out that there are parts of the Quran that are actually Christian hymns.
Oh, no, this is exciting.
Can you unpack that for us? Go ahead.
This is the beautiful stuff, because you want to say, okay, if you have a prophet, supposition, hypothetical, you need to have a prophet because you're an Ishmaelite. And all of the Umayyad kingdom were Ishmaelites. And the whole Ishmaelite kingdom, they actually come from what is today Petra in Jordan.
So you need a prophet and a revelation. This might answer the question I had earlier. How does this come up?
Stop. Unpack that. What do you mean you need a prophet and why do you need a prophet and revelation? Answer that question.
If you're an Ishmaelite and you don't consider yourself either Jewish or Christian, you're following Ishmael rather than Isaac, maybe you want to have your own prophet and your own revelation. Is that possible?
There you go. And that's the problem. See, here you are. You now are the second biggest superpower of your day. You are now the Umayyad Caliph.
Mm-hmm.
And you now, you control all the way from Spain in the west, in your country, Spain in the west to India in the east, from Turkey in the north all the way to Yemen in the south. There is no other superpower that is big as yours except for the Byzantine, who are Christians. They're Trinitarian Christians. Therefore, you are in competition with them. They have a prophetic line. They also have a revelation. The Christians and Jews do. You are like the poor second cousin. Always, you've been looked down upon by the Jews and the Christians because you don't have a prophetic line. And Ishmael doesn't have a prophetic line. You have no revelation. You've got to borrow their revelation. But now you control the holy place. You control Jerusalem. So here you come. Abdul Malik is the guy that really you need to pinpoint, because Abdul Malik is the one that actually does something about it. And he is the greatest of all the Umayyad caliphs.
What year is he, Jay, approximately?
He's from 685 to 705. That's his dates.
Okay.
But he's living in Damascus. The question needs to be asked, what's he doing way up in Damascus? Why isn't he in Medina if he's a Muslim? Why isn't he living down where all the caliphs lived? Abu Bakr, Uthman, and Ali, Muhammad, they all ruled from Medina, did they not?
According to them, yeah.
So you have a battle in the Battle of Siffin, and Ali is killed in the Battle of Siffin, and Muawiyah takes over, and suddenly he's way up in Damascus in 661. Why is he in Damascus, not Medina? If everything has been ruling from Medina, they're now suddenly up in Damascus. Because there is no Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. Historically, we can't find any reference to them at all. Not from the 7th century. Not from the 7th century. That's why at the very beginning of this show, when you started saying, what about this Uthman and his putting together the Quran, I asked you one quick question. Where did you get that story from?
Yeah, I don't know.
You got that story from the traditions from Sahih Bukhari, Volume 6, which was not put together. No, that's the Sirah. That was another question.
Okay, all
I'm
right.
talking about the story about how the Quran was put together in by Uthman. That story comes from the 14th century.
14th century.
14th century, that's 700 years later. So here you have this Ishmaelite king. All of them were Ishmaelites, but they were still Christian. Then you have Abdul Malik, who is an anti-Trinitarian. Why do we know that? Just look at his coins. That's where the coins are so great. The coins are the best evidence you can get because they don't disintegrate, they don't deteriorate. They're made out of metal. Look at his coins. And on his coins, in Arabic, he's attacking, say not three, for God is one and he has no son. For God does not begetteth, nor is he begotten. Who is he attacking?
Yeah, the Christians, yeah.
He's attacking Jesus. He's attacking his divinity. He's attacking the Trinity, and he's attacking his sonship. For those are the associators, and we will defeat the associators. Who are the associators? The mushrikun, that's us. Those who elevate and put another man alongside God. We are the associated. We are associated.
This is about 700 AD, Jay?
Then it says, for la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, for there is only one God but God. How dare you associate another with God? There is only one God. And the Muhammad, the man you're waiting for, the Muhammad, the one that everybody's waiting for, is nothing more than the servant of God. He is not God. So this is all on his inscriptions. It's on the Dome of the Rock. He builds the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Why does he choose Jerusalem? Why doesn't he build it in Mecca? Because there is no Mecca that early. This is 691 now. He builds the Dome of the Rock in 691. He's been in power for 6 years. And it's the biggest building of its kind. It's the most resplendent building in the world at that time. It's still resplendent today. Look in Jerusalem. It stands out. Everywhere you look, you can see the Dome of the Rock sitting up there, up on what? On Mount Moriah. Why Mount Moriah? Okay, Frank, you're a biblical scholar. Why Mount Moriah?
Because he's going to say that that's where Ishmael was sacrificed, or almost sacrificed, because Abraham took Isaac up there, say the Christians and the Jews, but he's going to say he's an Ishmaelite. He's following Ishmael, so it was really Abraham bringing Ishmael up there, and that's where we're going to put our... And
go on from there. Who's going to return to Mount Moriah?
Who's going to return to Mount Moriah?
The Messiah.
Well, yeah, Messiah. And they actually, don't the Muslims now think Jesus is going to come?
Well, forget that. Remember, that's today. Okay. I'm saying in the 7th century, who was everybody waiting for?
Oh.
The Muhammad.
The Muhammad. You got to unpack that too, because People
the
think
Mahdi
that.
is the Messiah. Let's just stay with that.
Okay,
right
stay
now.
with
The
it. All right,
anointed
go
one.
ahead.
Everybody's waiting for the Mahdi to return. The Jews are waiting for the Mahdi to come, and the Christians are waiting for the Mahdi to return.
To return, yeah.
Right? The Mahdi is the anointed one. The praise.
Yeah.
It's a title. It's a title. It's what it is. It's not a
Right,
name. It's a
right.
title. They're waiting. And where is he going to return to? To Mount Moriah. So what do? You put your building right there in Mount Moriah. You stick it right there where everybody's waiting for it. That's why he chose Jerusalem. And then you write all these inscriptions around the inner ambulatories of this building, attacking this man that they're waiting for. He is not three. He is, for God is one, and he has no son. And truly this Muhammad that you're waiting for, not Muhammad, there are no vowels there. We put Muhammad into it. We impose Muhammad into it because we have vowels today. Back then there were no vowels. The Muhammad is nothing more than the servant of God. So this is really an anti-Trinitarian attack. It's an internecine Christian polemic is what it is. This is a sectarian controversy.
So when people say that Islam is a Christian heresy, to a certain extent, they're correct.
Absolutely. And how do we know that? John of Damascus tells us.
In this compelling episode of Pastor Frank Turek's podcast, Dr. J. Smith meticulously examines early Islamic history and presents evidence that challenges the traditional narrative. He presents compelling evidence suggesting that Muhammad may have been portrayed as a historical figure for political purposes rather than through divine revelation. Smith notes the absence of Mecca in 7th century records and points out that the Quran's earliest texts include themes from Christian hymns, Jewish apocryphal writings, and Gnostic legends. Tales like Solomon directing birds or Abraham surviving a fiery pit echo 2nd century folklore, not sacred texts. He argues Islam, shaped under leaders like Abdul Malik, emerged as a counter to Trinitarian Christianity. Drawing on coins, inscriptions, and the Dome of the Rock, he contends that early Islam developed amid political rivalry with Christianity and that Muhammad may originally have been a title meaning the praised one, not a personal name. This provocative analysis, whether you're Christian, Muslim, or skeptic, demands attention.